Again, good morning. I'm going to start with my topic on esophagus, stomach, and duodenum. In studying the diseases of the esophagus, the stomach, and the duodenum, of course, sometimes or most of the time, we need the help of our gastroenterologist to have a picture of the mucosa of the esophagus, stomach, and duodenum. That's why it's very important to refer our patients to gastroenterologists for preoperative workups. Mhm. The endoscope being inserted to the esophagus, looking for ulcerations, looking for lesions, looking for tumors, okay, inside the, especially in the stomach. Always study on Barrett's esophagus because this might come out in your board exam. I cannot expound on this disease because it's very lengthy. But for a shortcut, Barrett's esophagus is tubular esophagus is lined with columnar epithelium. Normal is squamous epithelium. Confirmed by biopsy, multiple biopsies taken in cephalad direction, susceptible to malignant degeneration. So in the upper parts of the slide, we have the normal mucosa and we have Barrett's esophagus here in these pictures. In Barrett's esophagus, there is presence of columnar mucosa extending at least 3 cm into the esophagus, and you will need endoscopy with biopsy to diagnose this disease. What is very important about Barrett's esophagus, it might develop or transform into adenocarcinoma later on. If you have a patient with Barrett's esophagus, very important to follow up these patients regularly, endoscopy regularly for possible malignant transformation. For the esophagus, two very important pathologic diagnoses are squamous cell carcinomas and adenocarcinomas. If you were given a tumor in the upper esophagus, down to the middle esophagus, always think of squamous cell carcinoma. As I have said before, squamous cell carcinoma is very, very aggressive tumor. The good thing about squamous cell carcinoma, they are very responsive to chemotherapy. If you are given a tumor in the distal esophagus or in the stomach, most likely this is adenocarcinoma. Remember that. There are different risk factors in the development of esophageal cancer. This is just for the recall part. Ano? We are just reviewing this. Heavy alcohol use, tobacco smoking, betel nut chewing, although this is not very common already here in the Philippines. Look at this, Barrett's esophagus, food preservatives, chronic esophagitis from gastroesophageal reflux diseases. For the esophagus, squamous cell carcinoma is the most common malignancy worldwide. It is multicentric, meaning upon diagnosis of squamous cell carcinoma, there might be some deposits already in other parts of the esophagus aside from the primary tumor. In other countries, also here in the Philippines, when we see squamous cell carcinoma, Another good alternative aside from surgery is pre-op chemotherapy and radiation therapy. And we found out that after treatment with chemotherapy or radiation therapy, there will be complete pathologic response of the tumor. The controversy lies whether you're going to do resection for a negative pathologic mucosa, or you just do observation. So there's a controversy on that area. You can also see that in squamous cell carcinoma, there's a second synchronous lesion found in 25% of patients. There is logic in giving pre-op chemo and radiation. Now, when we go to the lower portion of the esophagus, we see adenocarcinoma. It is seen in more distal parts of the esophagus and cardia, arise from submucosal glands within the squamous lined esophagus, columnar epithelium in distal esophagus, columnar epithelium of Barrett's esophagus, typically invasive at the time of discovery. When you have adenocarcinoma, if it is resectable, do the resection. This is esophageal cancer in different stages: stage 0, stage 1, stage 2A, stage 3, stage 4. If you have lymph nodes already, this is stage 3. And if you have a stage 3 disease, very imperative to give adjuvant chemotherapy and radiotherapy. For stage 4 cancer, please do not resect. Refer for chemotherapy, or if there is a complete obstruction, you can put a metallic or plastic stent so that the patient can eat. For palliation, sometimes you need to resect, or if there's any bleeding, you give radiation. TNM staging of the esophagus. For the workups in esophageal cancer, of course, we need a complete history and PE. Please do not resect esophageal cancer without proper metastatic workups. And if you are dealing with a very localized or extensive disease, you have an option in requesting PET-CT scan. Okay. We need to ask for chest, abdominal CT scan with oral and IV contrast as a form of metastatic workup, and also to verify the extent of the tumor. Pelvic CT scan, we seldom request this in our patients with esophageal cancer. PET-CT scan, and of course endoscopic ultrasound to know the invasiveness of the disease, and so forth and so on. Evaluation: chest x-ray in 50% of patients will show air fluid level in prevertebral region, pointing to an abnormality in the esophagus. You can request also for a barium swallow, but if your patient has complete obstruction, please do not use barium. Use water-soluble dye, because if the patient unfortunately will have aspiration and he or she aspirated barium, you will have a big problem. Barium is very harmful to the pulmonary mucosa. For evaluation, esophagogram provides staging info in terms of location and length. However, if you want to know the length of the tumor, a good diagnostic tool will be CT scan. And for esophagogram, accurate estimation of the degree of obstruction. Esophagonoscopy, of course, for biopsy, for determination of the length of the tumor, and to verify how much obstruction is present in the patient. Endoscopic ultrasound is very good if you want to verify the presence of lymph nodes around the esophageal cancer. And as I have said earlier, you can do biopsy through endoscopic ultrasound. You can do biopsy of the lymph node. By the way, lymph nodes larger than 1 centimeter is clinically more or less positive already, more or less, no? Bronchoscopy is needed. It is mandatory in tumors adjacent to trachea and mainstem bronchus and for middle third tumors. Before you do the resection for a very extensive disease, very important to ask for bronchoscopy and also to verify if there is a fistula between the esophagus and the bronchus. For the evaluation, ask for a CT scan, chest and upper abdomen as a standard. Very important for the liver metastasis. Evaluating esophageal wall and paraesophageal structures provides useful information about the lymph node involvement in concomitant metastatic spread. We go now to the accuracy of endoscopic ultrasound. Most accurate technique for preoperative locoregional staging of esophageal carcinoma. Clearly superior to computed tomography and magnetic resonance imaging if you want to know the thickness and lymph node involvement. But for the surrounding structures, you need to ask for a CT scan of the patient. This is our endoscopic ultrasound machine in St. Luke's. There's a probe at the tip of the scope in order to perform ultrasonography of the lumen of the mucosa. This is endoscopic ultrasound. Additional benefits of endoscopic ultrasounds. Ability to obtain fine needle aspiration samples from the celiac lymph nodes for tissue-directed staging of esophageal cancer. Assessment of response to neoadjuvant therapy in patients with esophageal cancer. For example, before chemotherapy, the patient had enlarged lymph nodes surrounding the tumor, but after chemotherapy, you saw the lymph nodes became smaller. You can do a fine needle aspiration of the lymph nodes using endoscopic ultrasound, and most probably you'll find out that the tumor, or I mean the lymph nodes, are already cancer-free. For the CT scan, you'll know the length of the tumor plus the presence of lymph nodes around the tumor. This is PET CT scan, very important to verify metastasis. This is the patient with esophageal cancer. Okay. If you go to the PET center of St. Luke's, okay, you can go to the machine, you can go to the monitor, and you play around on the images. When you put your, like this, for example, when you put your cursor on the tumor, it will give you an SUV reading, standard update, standard SUV standard uptake value. When you put your cursor here and it's more than 2.5 SUV, more or less think of cancer. But if this is about 1.5, although it's black, most probably it's benign or infectious or TB. Our PET CT scan, these are the gantries. I don't know if this is the CT scan and this is the PET gantry. No? These are called gantries. Gantry. Gantry. CT scan, PET scan, combine PET CT scan images, and you will show, and it will show the esophageal cancer and probably the presence of lymph node in the cervical region. For esophageal cancer, as I have said, there's a role for neoadjuvant therapy, especially for extensive diseases. Tumor extending to the abdominal cavity, extending to the stomach, you may opt to consider neoadjuvant chemoradiation to shrink the tumor. For adjuvant treatment, it's almost automatic for squamous cell carcinoma. For adenocarcinoma, for early stages, no adjuvant therapy. But for deep tumors, deep adenocarcinomas, you need to give adjuvant chemo and radiation therapy. Radiation therapy is used to control local recurrence in our patients. Surgery for resectable esophageal cancer. How would you know that your patient has resectable esophageal cancer? Of course, using radiologic techniques like CT scan, MRI. Please remember, for distal esophageal cancer or for distal esophageal cancer involving the stomach, the surgery of choice is transhiatal esophagectomy. Again, for distal esophageal tumors, the surgery of choice is transhiatal esophagectomy. For mid-esophagus or upper esophagus, you can open the patient through a right thoracic incision. You operate on the patient on the right side, not on the left, because you have your heart on the left side, and you do your anastomosis in the chest. In transhiatal esophagectomy, you do the anastomosis in the neck. Also very important to do lymph node harvest because it is needed in the TNM staging. Although most of the time, your patient will still need chemo and radiation therapy post-operatively because many of these patients are extensive already or there will be positive lymph node involvement already. For resectable esophageal cancer, it will be involvement up to adventitia T3 even with positive lymph nodes. However, if the esophageal cancer already extended to the lung parenchyma or already invaded the heart, of course, this is already unresectable. Remember this slide, general rule for mid and upper esophagus, do the transthoracic approach. For the lower esophagus, transhiatal approach. For the transthoracic esophageectomy, you can do the Ivor Lewis. Left thoracotomy, I don't like that because of the heart on the left side, which may affect your surgery. And you can also do a left thoraco-abdominal, opening the thorax, opening the abdomen with a big incision. It's up to you. It really depends on the location. It really depends on the expertise of the surgeon. This is transhiatal esophageectomy. You have a midline incision in the abdomen. You also have an incision in the cervical region. I prefer the left side of the patient. Dissection of the after gastric region, distal stomach. Dissection of the esophagus in the chest, dissecting it around to pull up or to pull down the esophagus. Okay. If you are performing a transhiatal esophageectomy, please make the stomach, okay? Cut the stomach, make it a tubular organ before you pull it up in the cervical region. And you do the anastomosis. Most of the time, there will be some leakage in the cervical region, but don't worry, they will heal in a matter of weeks. And when you do transhiatal esophageectomy, you pulled up the stomach, please do pyloroplasty because you already cut the vagus nerve. You will have problems with food retention if you don't do a pyloroplasty. Okay, this is what I'm telling you. This is the stomach pulled up in the cervical region. Please be careful in this area because I have seen patients who had leak because of damage to the thoracic duct. If you have a leak, just manage the patient with nutrition, parenteral nutrition, and do not feed the patient orally. This is the esophagus. What are the advantages of transhiatal esophageectomy? Avoiding a thoracotomy and its associated respiratory complications, shorter operating time, anastomosis in the cervical region. Okay. The problem with thoracic anastomosis, if you are going to have a leak, it will be devastating for the patient. Why? The patient will develop mediastinitis. However, leakage is more common in transhiatal esophageectomy. Less leakage in the thoracic anastomosis. This is the patient. Okay. You can also use bats in patients. You can also employ stapler anastomosis for faster operation. Now, this is the Ivor Lewis. You open the thorax in the right side, stomach mobilized, and intra-abdominal lymph nodes are dissected. Posterolateral thoracotomy in the fifth interspace. You can also open the abdomen, of course, in order to free the stomach in the abdomen. This is our right thoracic approach. And you retract the ribs using this rib retractor. Very important. Again, I would like to emphasize that you harvest lymph nodes as much as possible in the upper abdomen, in the thoracic area, or in the cervical region, either using Ivor-Lewis or the transhiatal approach. Of course, in transhiatal approach, you cannot harvest um, lymph nodes in the thoracic region. This is the esophagogastric anastomosis via transthoracic esophagectomy. Left thoracotomy, left thoracotomy, left thoraco-abdominal approach. It's very hard to do the surgery because of the beating of the heart of the patient. Okay, I have already discussed this. For the recall approach, mortality is higher than the transthoracic esophagectomy because of mediastinitis. Anastomotic stricture is higher in the transhiatal esophagectomy because sometimes you are devascularizing the stomach already. Therefore, higher risk for leaks. Okay. Anastomotic leak higher in transhiatal esophagectomy. And of course, recurrent laryngeal nerve injury higher in transhiatal esophagectomy. Okay. Gastric pull-up in transhiatal esophagectomy. Please read on this kasi I believe that you will be asked a question regarding a mid-esophageal tumor or a distal esophageal tumor, probably involving the stomach. Please read on this and read on the different surgical procedures available. You can do colonic interposition instead of the stomach, but most of the time, this colonic interposition is employed after the patient had an alli or acidic ingestion or acid ingestion. I mean, but I have not performed this procedure yet using colon interposition. So I'm not very familiar with this, although I have some colleagues who have already tried this procedure. Colonic interposition, substernal region. Sorry, I'm not familiar with the surgery. Now, sometimes you will have patients with stage 4 or locally advanced esophageal cancer. If you have obstruction, refer this patient to the gastroenterologist for the insertion of stent so that the patient can eat. The gastroenterologist can also employ laser therapy to destroy the obstruction in the esophagus. Photodynamic therapy, I think, is not yet available here in the Philippines. Okay. For stomach and esophageal tumors, please read on the National Cancer Comprehensive Network guidelines, NCCN. For nutrition, if the patient can eat, use oral feeding. If the patient is very weak, cannot eat, you can also give parenteral nutrition. Sometimes in our patients, we put a portacat. We can feed our patients through this portacat device placed in the chest of the patient. Pain control, radiotherapy, and or medications. For bleeding, radiotherapy is being implemented, or you can give Hemostan. Endoscopic therapy by the gastroenterologist. esophageal dilatation by the gastroenterologist can also be used. This is photodynamic tissue destruction. Nice to know lang, not available here in the Philippines. I don't know in other hospitals. This was a patient. This patient died already. This patient had complete obstruction of the distal esophagus as seen in this esophagogram. The patient was referred to a gastroenterologist. A stent was inserted. The patient was able to eat, but because the tumor was already locally advanced, the patient received chemotherapy, but he died in the hospital. Mhm. Okay. This is the obstruction in this area. Well, this patient had insertion of the metallic stent extending from the distal esophagus down to the stomach. This is the esophageal stent system we use. Okay. For patients who are very malnourished, you can put a jejunostomy tube. Why jejunostomy tube? Because um, for the stomach, you might need it later on for the anastomosis. Sometimes you need to put a gastrostomy tube, especially for stage 4 patients, for feeding, for your medications. Instead of giving it orally, you give it through the gastrostomy tube. This is in the operating room using a different kind of tube to inflate one lung only during the thoracic approach. Kylie, sometimes you see this in transhiatal esophagectomy. As I have said, don't worry. Although this will make your patient malnourished, just support the patient with high protein nutrition, good parenteral nutrition, and the patient will recover. Meticulous dissection is done to avoid recurrent nerve injury. Please remember that. And of course, patients sometimes will develop mucocutaneous fistula, but based on our experiences, after a few weeks, these fistulas will already be healing. And for recurrence, cervical recurrence, you do a biopsy. If this is still adeno or squamous cell carcinoma due to esophageal cancer, you refer this patient for palliative chemotherapy. Mhm. So in esophageal cancer, the choice of surgery depends on the site and preference of the surgeon. Being a surgical oncologist, about this three-field lymphadenectomy or two-field, uh, for me, as long as you can get all the possible lymph node basins around the dissection area, do so for submission to the pathology department. And of course, management of gastric cancer. For gastric cancer, you can do total gastrectomy or just proximal gastrectomy. You can also transhiatal esophagectomy. But please remember to do a D1 dissection or removal of the lymph nodes around the tumor. And you do the proper reconstructive procedure. Del Bill Route 1, Bill Route 2, or esophagojejunostomy. It really depends on the surgery done to your patient. D1 dissection entails removal of the lymph node basins around the primary tumor. Although D2 dissection, we don't do this anymore here. Probably if you're in Japan, you will do D2. Okay, you do the dissection in the area of the celiac axis. Okay. Now, with regards to peptic ulcer disease, I believe that there will, I don't know if this will be included because nowadays we seldom see uh, peptic disease, peptic ulcer diseases among our patients. But just in case you will be asked, please read on peptic ulcer disease, read or review these slides I'm going to show to you. How come duodenal ulcers and gastric ulcers are not very common already? Because of the use of proton pump inhibitors. These are very powerful drugs to diminish HCl secretion in the stomach. For perforation, you do a vertical abdominal incision. Okay. For duodenal ulcer, we do not do ulcer biopsy because it's very uncommon to have duodenal carcinoma. But for stomach, before you do the patch or you just in case you want to do patching only, you do biopsy of the ulcer margin. For duodenal ulcer with perforation, you can do Graham patch if with extensive peritonitis, no previous history of ulcer disease. Patching um, is very commonly done, and you just give the patient proton pump inhibitors after the surgery. Study on Graham patching. I'm already 54 and I have never seen a highly selective vagotomy. I don't know if other surgeons are doing this highly selective vagotomy. You can also do truncal vagotomy and pyloroplasty in duodenal ulcer. What is important in duodenal ulcer is you diminish the HCl secretion. By using or employing truncal vagotomy, you diminish the secretion. However, you have problem with food retention. That's why you have to do pyloroplasty in our patients. For gastric ulcer associated with H. pylori infection. Okay. For the stomach, please read on gastric lymphoma. When you see gastric lymphoma, our role is just, of course, pre of we do biopsy together with a gastroenterologist. Because lymphoma can be treated with um, it can be treated by uh, chemotherapy and radiation therapy. Is this associated with H. pylori infection? By the way, H. pylori infection is associated with lymphoma. There are some patients with lymphoma, you treat the H. pylori infection and the gastric lymphoma will be, treated also. Diagnosed by biopsy and urea breath test. For gastric ulcer, I don't know if you can perform parietal sulfagotomy if you are an expert in this kind of surgery, but we can do vagotomy and pyloroplasty, vagotomy and atherectomy. You read on the urea breath test, please. By the way, I gave the PowerPoint presentation to the PSGS Secretariat, so you can also review. I know you cannot retain all the details I'm telling you right now. For gastric ulcer, you can do parietal cell vagotomy. Okay, just read on gastric ulcer, please, because this will be needing a big amount of time in order to discuss gastric ulcer or gastric perforation. Okay, gastric ulcer, you can do vagotomy, pyloroplasty, vagotomy and pyloroplasty, vagotomy and atherectomy. With vagotomy and atherectomy, this is very effective because you eliminate acetylcholine from vagus nerve, gastrin from antrum. With caustic ingestion, just remember that you need to support the patient with fluid resuscitation. With caustic ingestion, it means the patient ingested a big amount of acidic or basic liquid. So in order to support the patient, you give the right fluids. You can also give antibiotics. Do early intubation if it's possible laryngeal or epiglottic injury. Endoscopic grading. Okay. By the way, injury to the esophagus may predispose the patient in the development of esophageal cancer. Is there an option for operative resection or esophagoplasty only? You can do esophageal replacement with colon, stomach, jejunum. If the stomach is severely affected, you use the colon or the jejunum. But between colon and jejunum, the colon has a better blood supply. No emetics, no steroids, no NGT, you might cause perforation. No early dilatation, you might cause perforation. Now, we go to gastric cancer. Of course, what is needed for gastric cancer is upper GI endoscopy, CT scan of the upper abdomen, including the liver. Okay, endoscopic ultrasound can also be done. But of course, in gastric cancer, especially in extensive diseases, there is a role for laparoscopic staging, meaning for extensive diseases, you open up the patient, you wash the peritoneal cavity with 1 liter of NSS using laparoscopic technique. Don't do the definitive surgery first, okay? Do not do the definitive surgery, but you send the washings to the pathology department for cytopathology. If the fluid is positive for malignancy, do not do gastric resection. You do pre-op chemotherapy or palliative chemotherapy. Surgery for gastric cancer, you can do distal gastrectomy for distal lesions. For patients with extensive disease, you can do total gastrectomy. Based on my experience, I have seen so many patients with linitis plastica. I just put jejunostomy tube for feeding. Okay, total gastrectomy for proximal lesions, diffuse distribution. Very important in gastric surgery. Before you close the patient, send your margins to the pathology department for frozen section to verify if your margins are negatives are negative, to verify if your margins are negative, because sometimes even though the margins look free of cancer, sometimes they turn out to be positive later on. Aim for an R0 resection, meaning no microscopic disease in the margin. This is D1 dissection, D2 dissection. What is very important is you harvest lymph nodes during surgery. For gastric cancer, these are the important points. May do pre-op laparoscopy for staging and peritoneal washing in locally advanced bulky tumors. Put LIGA clips in the operative field for post-operative radiotherapy. Roux-en-Y without jejunal reservoir is enough after total gastrectomy. Reconstruction after total gastrectomy. For this session, in summary, we have discussed benign diseases of the esophagus. By the way, for the benign diseases, it will just be leiomyoma. Normally, the treatment is resection. Okay. Now we proceed with some cases. So this patient is a 56-year-old male. One-day history of hematemesis after eating an apple, followed by generalized weakness. Patient was seen in St. Luke's. CT scan revealed PTB, enlarged lymph node in the gastrohepatic region, small to marginal size lymph nodes at the level of the subcarinal and asagoesophageal region. They did a biopsy and it showed moderately differentiated squamous cell carcinoma. Final diagnosis, squamous cell carcinoma, grade 2, esophagus. Abdominal CT scan, unremarkable. Upper GI endoscopic ultrasound showed involvement of the mucosa and submucosa. The muscle layer seems mostly intact except for very small areas of mild thickening. Impression, esophageal malignancy, T1, so early esophageal cancer, potentially T2, N1. So I believe this patient has the tumor in the probably in the mid esophageal region. What's the next step? Okay, the patient underwent chemotherapy because the patient had squamous cell carcinoma using cisplatin and 5-FU combination, and patient also underwent radiotherapy, conventional RT and IMRT. You'll see that in this patient, the physicians opted for a non-surgical treatment for the patient. Another patient. So you will see that there's a role, not only surgery, but other modalities. Another patient, difficulty in swallowing. By the way, these are long cases. I just removed some of the slides. The patient had esophagoscopy with biopsy esophagus. There's a large necrotic, friable circumferential mass at the 20 centimeter level, obstructing 90% of the lumen. Histopathology, well-differentiated squamous cell carcinoma. So probably in the mid-esophagus. Chest and upper abdominal CT scan. Distension of the proximal esophagus with a 3.6 by 4 centimeter by 11.3 centimeter mass at the middle and distal segment. There's a 1.2 centimeter lymph node at the right side of the lesion. Okay. For this patient, the patient underwent jejunostomy tube insertion, nutritional build-up, neoadjuvant chemoradiotherapy before the definitive procedure. Very important. Before you do a major procedure, please check on the nutritional status of your patients. If the patient is severely malnourished and you subject him or her to major surgery, there will be higher mortality rates, higher morbidity rates in your patients. Planned surgery is total esophageectomy with gastric pull-up in the future. Another case, 58-year-old male with a chief complaint of dysphagia. When you have this dysphagia in the questionnaire, common problem with this is probably esophageal cancer, stomach cancer, gastroscopy, large necrotic friable circumferential mass, 20 centimeter, biopsy squamous cell carcinoma, well differentiated. Where is this squamous cell? Probably distal esophagus. Underwent jejunostomy tube insertion, referred to the nutrition service for build-up, referred to Med-Onco, Rad-Onco for neoadjuvant concurrent treatment. Able to tolerate soft diet, referred back to surgery, and CT scan showed soft tissue mass, mid and distal esophagus, and large lymph nodes. This was the patient. So what was done to the patient? So working diagnosis, squamous cell carcinoma, distal esophagus, status post neoadjuvant concurrent chemoradiotherapy, status post nutritional buildup. So what was done to the patient? The patient underwent esophagectomy with gastric pull-up. So this patient underwent transhiatal esophagectomy. Is this ano? But you will notice this patient underwent closed tube thoracostomy. So most probably this is not a transhiatal esophagectomy. This patient underwent the thoracic approach, because you will notice the chest tube insertion. Okay, so for this patient, an eventful post-operative course. Another patient, 33-year-old female, married, progressive difficulty in swallowing. The patient had an accidental ingestion of muriatic acid, now with progressive difficulty in swallowing. Working diagnosis, esophageal stricture, secondary to caustic ingestion, status post jejunostomy tube insertion. Esophagogram, severe esophageal stricture at the level of C5 to C6, secondary to acid structure. Endoscopy, inserted up to 13 centimeter level from the incisors. There is severe narrowing of the esophageal lumen at this level, preventing further progression of the scope. Impression with the use of endoscopy, severe esophageal stricture, proximal segment. So let us see what was done. So this patient underwent transhiatal esophagectomy with gastric pull-up, to replace the diseased esophagus. So this is what. So this procedure was done to the patient. Another patient, 49-year-old male, married, Filipino, admitted because of epigastric pain. CT scan showed pyloric wall thickening, and the patient was advised nutritional build-up for surgery. CT scan of the abdomen, distended stomach with pyloric wall thickening, which may relate to the patient's known tumor. Stomach cancer. For the plan, distal subtotal gastrectomy with Roux-en-Y anastomosis. The patient underwent the surgery and the final histopath, fully differentiated adenocarcinoma, pyloroantral region, diffusely infiltrative with invasion to the perigastric fatty tissue and with metastasis to the lymph nodes, 6 out of 25. Surgical margins are clear, stage 3A. Definitely, this patient will need pause of chemo and radiation because of the presence of positive lymph nodes. Another patient complained of epigastric pain. There were gastric ulcers in the antrum, status post-sclerotherapy. So this patient had, gastric ulcers. The surgical plan was antral gastrectomy with truncal vagotomy. UT scan with IV contrast. So this is another patient, probably. UT scan with IV contrast. Distal stomach is related to new growth. Okay. So sorry, this is another patient. 62-year-old male, ulcerating friable mass at the antrum, extending up to the angularis at the lesser curvature. So this is a stomach cancer. CT scan showed proximal duodenum, distal stomach, shows circumferential wall thickening to consider new growth. Preoperative diagnosis, gastric outlet obstruction with upper GI bleed, secondary to gastric antral mass, status post esophagogastrodinoscopy with biopsy. And it shows signet ring cell carcinoma. When you see signet ring cell carcinoma, this means that the tumor is very aggressive. Radical subtotal gastrectomy was the planned procedure. So for the operative technique, subtotal gastrectomy, procedure done. Radical subtotal gastrectomy with D1 dissection, segmental transverse colectomy, probably because of the involvement of the transverse colon, loop gastrojejunostomy with jejunostomy. Final histopath, adenocarcinoma, fully differentiated, diffuse type with signet ring cell features. 3 out of 12 perigastric lymph nodes positive for metastasis. Therefore, this patient will undergo chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Final diagnosis, fully differentiated adenocarcinoma with signet ring cell features, gastric antrum, T4N1 M0, status post, radical subtotal gastrectomy, D1 dissection, R0 resection. Very good. Another patient with upper gastrointestinal bleeding, probably secondary to bleeding peptic ulcer disease. So this patient underwent CT scan of the upper abdomen with contrast, gastric fundus, mucosal hypertrophy, which may represent an inflammatory infection versus neoplastic process. So let us see what happened. Intraoperative findings showed adhesions at the anterior abdominal wall extending to the falciform ligament, enlarged lymph nodes at the perigastric area along the greater curvature, approximately 1 centimeter. Palpable nodule at the posterior wall of the gastric body. So, gastric ulcer, posterior wall of gastric body. So, there was a gastric ulcer. So, final diagnosis, upper gastrointestinal bleeding secondary to a bleeding malignant gastric ulcer. Posterior wall, body of the stomach, gastric adenocarcinoma, body of the stomach, T2N0M0, M0. So is this patient candidate for chemo? Probably no, because this is T2N0M0. With that, I end my lecture. For any question, we will answer your questions during the discussion part of this session. Have a great day, everyone.